And I want to talk a little bit more about pain. I know a few weeks ago we started talking a little bit more about other types of pain besides just neuroplastic. So I want to dive into that a little bit because, again, helpful information for some people. Um, some of the questions that I got, well, I guess a theme of some of the questions I got were twofold. Like, what happens if, especially at the beginning of our program or as we're getting to different progressions, where you start to feel worse, like increased symptoms, new sensations or symptoms, or maybe your hips are feeling better, but you now start to have back pain. Like, what does that mean? What's going on? Really important. Again, information to track, right? So we're aware of it. But a couple of reasons that we often see that happening, especially let's say it's happening earlier in the program after we've gone through a bunch of assessments, or when you're getting to new progressions, like you're not really changing much else personally with what you're doing, but we're just getting to different progressions. If somebody is restricted with mobility, so let's say you have tight hips or tight pelvic floor, or we're working on ankles, or we're just increasing mobility in some capacity, but you're still doing your normal workouts, right? You're going to the gym, you're doing Pilates, maybe you're running or biking or things like that. So you're still doing everything else pretty normal to what your routine was coming into this program. And you're noticing either an increase in symptom severity, like it's more intense, it feels more extreme, or it lasts longer than it used to, and or it's more irritable, meaning it needs less of a trigger for you to feel it. Part of that can be when we increase mobility, we are now making these muscles that used to work in a small range work in a bigger range of motion, right? So maybe throughout the day, we don't think we're doing anything different, but because we're now having and starting the day or the workout with better mobility, we don't now recognize like, oh, okay, now these muscle fibers are actually working through a bigger range. And what we don't get as fast as we get increased mobility is increased strength and or motor control, right? So motor control meaning your brain knows how to activate the right muscle at the right time and allow it to work with everything else. That strength component is more like, okay, it's strong enough to do what we want it to do, right? It has the stability to support my joint in this new range of motion. Typically, so mobility will happen fastest and easiest. Motor control, because it's a neurological improvement, will happen the next quickest. And then that strength phase, the endurance phase, that takes a little bit longer to just come on board, right? We have to be a little bit more consistent with what we do in order to get there and maintain that. So when we're experiencing these types of changes, especially after we've tested a bunch of things or moved your body in new ways, that's really helpful and really important for us to identify, because we might then prescribe a certain exercise a little bit more often, or educate you on how we need to now focus on this strength exercise right after this mobility exercise to help with that transition so that your body is getting that support, the stability that it's needed to not be symptomatic unnecessarily. And even with, for example, let's say your hips now feel great, but you're starting to feel discomfort in your back. The back loves stability, right? The hips are geared for mobility, the back loves stability. So when the hips are now more mobile, all of the muscles from the back that connect into the hip, the pelvis, that region, they're now trying to work and function in a new range that they haven't really been asked to work and function in for so long, because we've been stiff or because we've been doing reduced movements or things like that. And so again, that type of new stiffness or new sensation in the back is cueing us into, great, now let's make sure we're improving the strength of the back in this bigger range of motion, or in different positions, or with dynamic activities as opposed to just, basic movement. So that's kind of where the conversation goes as you guys are getting farther into the program, as you guys are learning more about how your body is feeling, and what the sticking points are as far as like what's naturally just going to feel better as you keep doing things versus where you're feeling like you're hitting a roadblock, or something new is occurring and you don't really know how to make sense of it. So I can get more specific with that answer obviously as needed, but I think it is important to just understand that sometimes new pain, new symptoms, things like that are not uncommon, nor are they bad, right? a piece of information. It's data. We love data, and we get to do something with that data so that we are solving the problem, right? We're putting the puzzle pieces together, and we're not just skipping something or avoiding something. Alternatively too, though, for some people, that's where we then might be a little bit more specific in how we're guiding you with the other things you're doing exercise-wise. So a lot of you guys, right, you come in, you're already doing your own workouts or runs or biking sessions or whatnot. And one of the important things for you is to stay as active as possible, right? So as we're gathering this information, we like to keep you as active as possible. We like to keep you doing what you're typically doing and just seeing what changes as we add these new protocols to your plan. But if we get to the point where now we know, okay, what you're actually doing is now a trigger, or we've confirmed it's a trigger for whatever symptom we're trying to manage, that's where we then might either be a little bit more prescriptive in holding off on something for a period of time so you can build up that foundation. Or we might have you now strategically do a couple of the exercises from us right before, right after you do your workout, your run, or whatever it may be, so that, again, we're preparing your body for that activity, giving it the things that we know it needs the most based off of all of the information we've gathered from all the assessments and the tests that we've done. So I want to talk a little bit, I think Sally asked this question a few weeks ago, and I thought it was a good question because I know over the last couple of weeks, we were talking a lot more about neuroplastic pain. And she was asking the difference between neuroplastic versus neuropathic. There's also what we call nociceptive pain. Who is familiar with the fact that there's different types of pain? Good. Jen, love that. Okay, so let's talk about this because it might not apply to everybody or every situation, but I think it's helpful information to have. So just a quick review, neuroplastic is the brain body changes, right? It happens with chronic pain. We learn these new patterns, and essentially it's our brain just misinterpreting safe messages from the body as if they were dangerous because of, you know, past experiences or the things that led this pain point to be chronic. When we're talking about neuropathic pain, that's more related to, if you want to think about it, being nerve damage. So things like neuropathy, neuropathic pain, they're kind of interchangeable, but that's where we're going to be dealing with dysfunctions of the nervous system because of an injury or a disease. So symptoms can be, you know, like tingling, numbness, hands and feet. Like if you hear about neuropathy in feet with diabetes, right? That's an example of neuropathic changes. We can also have like cramping, twitching, things like loss of balance, emotional disturbances even can be present. And then similar to some of what we talked about earlier, burning types of pain, sharp stabbing, shooting, those types of things indicate that there's something nerve-wise going on. A lot of that, again, it's stemming to like major injuries or illnesses, diseases, stuff like that. When we're talking about nociceptive pain, so think of that as tissue damage, right? So we have brain changes with one, we have nerve damage with another, we have tissue damage with another. And so this is, you know, the acute types of pain. We stub our toe, we sprain our ankle, we go to the dentist and have a cavity filled. That, I mean, they're physical pains, right? It can be like even burns or surgeries, things like that. That's where we're having pain, like because of the little nociceptors that we have in our body that tell our brain, okay, here's what we don't like, let's change our activities. So for a lot of us, especially if you had a mechanism of injury that initiated hip pain or back pain or things like that, it starts in that nociceptive place. And then it can then change into that neuroplastic place if it's been chronic. So those are a little bit of the differences. Again, with the nociceptive pain, we can have similar symptoms to nerve stuff, right? We can have like a spasm, we can have like a sharp or a stabbing. We can have a variation of symptoms that might be one or all, like in all of the categories. And that's why, like, I don't, probably most of you, right, on our very first call, before you even join the program, I'm asking you a bunch of different questions. I'm asking you to describe different situations. Like, I'm really getting a lot of input to gear me on, okay, how much of this might be nociceptive versus neuropathic versus neuroplastic? Because we want to make sure we have a general idea on the context of some of these symptoms as well. Because what we do to treat a nociceptive pain, like a sprained ankle or a hip pinch with a squat, might be different than if it's a neuroplastic type of pain, where we literally need to rewire the brain or change the movement pattern. So again, I don't expect you guys to know this all or to understand this all, but it kind of goes back to the theme of, if we're having symptoms, different sensations, or, you know, just things that aren't what you want to be your normal, that's where that information is going to make sense to somebody like me. Obviously somebody like Molly, right? We do these types of prescribing, evaluating, things like that often. But even if it's exercise wise, right? Like Jen might look at an exercise and pick up on a couple of things you're doing that you're not aware of, or that tells her something based off of how you're feeling. And so that's where, just bring this information to us, because it allows us to make sense of it on our end, so that we don't go down one path when maybe we needed to go down the other path. Or if we need to go down both paths, we do it in a way that's harmonious, so that it's, you know, not a guessing game for you, or it's not something where you feel like you don't understand what we're doing or why we're doing things. So I just wanted to briefly touch on that. Obviously, we don't have to talk super in depth because some of it doesn't apply to us or what we're doing, but I think it is helpful to know that we could have the same type of sensation or symptom and have it be from different triggers, and how we treat them is going to be different. So just keep that in mind, so that you're not ignoring something just because you think it might be little, or it's you've had it for so long, so you forget about it. Like, just keep note of it if you feel like we need to address it.